I have completed my viewing of the original Battlestar Galactica from 1977 to 1980. This is the way. Going into it, I didn't remember much about it. I was such a small child when I viewed it originally. I did really enjoy the reboot of the early 21st century. I did not realize how much of the original was used in that reboot until watching the original over again. I'd forgotten that there were human-appearing Cylons. They arrived right at the end of the series. I'd forgotten a great deal of relatively minor details that were brought into the reboot, even though others were changed. Of course, overall, my vlog is meant to be about the original, so here are my thoughts. As you can see, I'm a moderate Mandalorian. I can take off my helmet. An incredible piece of science fiction, theoretical science fiction. They actually cover a whole spectrum. The idea of ancient aliens, the idea of distant origins in deep space, various things that have become a staple of hypothetical thinking and science fiction now, but were relatively new, certainly new to the screen and to the small screen when they came out in the 1970s. The last season, when they have arrived at Earth and they find Earth in its contemporary state for 1980, they by then have created an advanced gravity drive and a saucer-shaped vessel that clearly is meant to be a flying saucer, and begin the slowly trying to colonize Earth in a way that does not upset the balance. This was so timely that at the end of each episode, there was a little disclaimer about the United States Air Force and Project Blue Book and finding no evidence of extraterrestrials or them being a threat to us, which is sort of interesting. Overall, I mean, the character development was not in depth. It was sort of a genre, shallow science fiction with suffered a lot of the same setbacks as the original Star Trek, the limitations of the fiction of the time, and honestly, being ahead of its time, having things it wanted to convey that perhaps were just too confusing. I mean, we do see there's some weirdness in the original Battlestar Galactica as far as the structure of the cosmos. They zip around from galaxy to galaxy. They talk about traveling from a universe to universe, but not in an interdimensional sense. Clearly, the perception of the cosmos was different, and at least the expectation that the audience would understand the cosmos was quite at a lower level. But beyond some of those oddities, in hindsight, overall, it presents a lot of ideas that were ahead of its time, ahead of the population being able to accept them, and I would say that it was good. But you can see where it did decline. It kind of struggles to find itself, where you keep finding planets with humans living on it, but they're humans. What's going on? They were looking for Earth. They get away from that and more of the battles with the Cylons. But then 1980, finding Earth, and it's several years later, Boxy's grown up, but it changes entirely. Like they are trying to find their footing. It's sort of a Assignment Earth Star Trek spinoff thing, and it's also sort of about UFOs, and then it's also about the Bad News Bears with the Super Scouts when they move children to Earth. To try to give them safe harbor and allow them to begin assimilating, but then only some of the children. So it's there's a lot of inconsistencies as they try to find their footing, but no wonder it ended up ending the way that it did, rather abruptly, with a feeble attempt in the final episode to revive Starbuck as a memory. But overall, it contributes greatly to the history of science fiction. I'd have to say overall, it was very much worth making and very much worth watching. And I really loved the reboot, as many people know. And I'm glad that that's part of our science fiction universe going forward. And I'm glad they did it when they did it, because that reboot was so good and it avoided all the problems that we're having right now with the overly woke crowd and the butchery of canon and of people. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. This is the way I have spoken.